Okay guys, what follows is a review that I'm going to do and some of the changes that I did to this Kobalt electric air compressor. It's the model XC602000. It's a two-stage air compressor with 175 maximum PSI pressure, 240 volts, and 60-gallon tank. Now this was just delivered, and Jeff delivered it. We took the box off. Everything looked good, just, you know, examination, and I'm just kind of going over this. I'm going to have to get some other things for it. Electrical stuff, some plumbing stuff, and I just happened to see in here oil. There was a tag here which was halfway coming off, said check oil, and I pulled it off and I felt oil. And I see this, and then if you look on the tank, here you see the oil here. So I'm assuming that that is just from when they filled it and there's no leaks, but we'll find out. So again, that's that oil right there. Here you can see the oil here. Let me come back around. Yeah, it's right here. So what it did is it ran down here. You can see it ran down there. You can see the shiny right there. And it ran down the tank. So probably just nothing much. As you can see, it is full. So once I get everything hooked up, I'm going to run it for the 30 minutes that they tell you without a load. I'll just, what I'm going to do is just leave everything uncapped, just let it turn it on. Okay guys, so I cleaned off the oil that was on here, and I pulled that tag off. I'm going to have to get this cleaned up. I left a little. Now to get in here where the oil is, it's kind of thin, so what I did is I just used the blade of my tri-square and put some paper on it and some cleaner. And then I'll use this to go back in here and kind of clean that. And I'll do that a couple times to get some clean paper, redo that, and maybe do that a few more times, and then that should be out. And then I think what that came from was when they filled this, maybe. I don't know if there's any more leaks. But it looked like there was there's the fuel plug. It looked like just sitting there, there was a gob of oil hanging right there, so we'll see. Okay, to get that sticky stuff from that tag that was left behind on the compressor, I'm using this stuff right here. It has not done anything to the paint. So basically, I took off as much as I could, and then it got soft, and now I'm going to just try to peel this off here. Okay guys, that cleaned up really good. With that goof off product, did not harm the paint. And then what I did after that is just use this Favor by S.E. Johnson, and this is what like I said, what I used to get the oil off inside here. And then when I was done with that goof off to get that sticky stuff, I used this. And then and this is what I'll use down the road to wipe down the unit. And this is like a Pledge product. I've always used Pledge, but then they've gotten out of hand with the cost. They give you less and the price is high. So I experimented with some other products, and I have a video on my YouTube channel here if you care to take a look at that. And this is one of them that I use. So it's a nice alternative to Pledge at a much better rate of cost. Here's the tag on it. And actually today is July 21st, 2019. It's a Sunday. And manufacture date was July 2nd of 19. Here's the model number, electrical specs, there's CFM rating, the pump number, and the tank size. 3 years limited warranty, whatever that means. And that is the serial number of my unit. Alright, let's take a look at the motor tag, the compressor motor. 3.7 horsepower, 3,450 RPMs, one phase, single phase, 60 hertz, 230 volts. And I think that's the, is it that the temperature rise, 40 degrees centigrade? I'm not really sure. And FR, is that an F? Whatever that is, 56. And I'm not sure what that thing in the bottom is. Okay, there's the tag that's on the pump, the two-stage pump. This number is on the actual motor, the 3-horse motor. Okay, so let's see how this thing fires up. I wired it up temporarily with a long extension cord, 10-2, and I'm going to change some stuff, and this hasn't been set yet. So just to get this thing going and broke in, because I'm going to be changing a few things on it. But I want to make sure the thing runs and everything before I do anything else to it. So I'm going to do the 30-minute, the manual says to let it run without a load. So that's open, and so is the bottom petcock. I've left it open, and we're just going to turn it on and see what happens. Okay, so before I put this air compressor into use, there's a couple changes I'm going to do to it. I've been busy and I haven't really had time to set it, so I thought that here's a good time to do some things that I didn't like about the compressor. And one of them is the drain on the pump. Now this is the plug they give you, okay? And it goes right in here where you see this extension I put on, this extension nipple. And it goes right in here. But if you take a look, when you pull that plug to change your oil, what's going to happen? It's all going to run down. It's going to make a hell of a mess. So what I did is I ran the compressor for 45 minutes. They say 30 minutes without a load, meaning not the compressor's on, but all your air valves are open. Open up the drain valve, open up the side, do not let it compress air. All you want to do is let the pump do its motions. I actually did it for 45 minutes. Then a few days later, when I got the stuff that I needed, I decided to run it, get it warm, unplug it so it could not be started, and then use this configuration you're seeing here. One of the things I did try is take aluminum foil, heavy duty aluminum foil, and pack it up in here, and then let it run down the tank, let it drape down the side of the tank into a bucket. Well, it's close to the garage door here. We had a little wind that day. The wind grabbed the foil, blew it down. Needless to say, it made a hell of a mess. I don't know why the engineers designed something like this stupid. And it's not just this compressor, it's a lot of things I see like this. At the least, they should have had a little thing on here, a little ledge, a little thing that was welded on a tab that was on an angle, so that when it did come out, it could at least drain away. You could hold something up there while it drained. But this is just not right. So I'll show you what I ended up doing here. By the way, here's what that mess that it made on my garage floor. So I wanted to eliminate any future issues, so I thought, let me get her done right now. Here's what I did then. The thread here is a 3/8 pipe thread on the pump. I bought a 3/8 diameter pipe thread by 2-inch long pipe nipple, brass, and a brass 90. And then attached to that, this Fumoto quick change valve. Now I've actually done a review on these Fumoto drain valves, and I'll put a link in the description of it. I've got over 25 years experience using these on vehicles, motorcycles. They work great. The one you need for this air compressor is this particular one here, or at least this is what I bought. I also received this drain kit that goes on, because as you'll notice, it's got a short nipple on here, so that when you open this valve to allow oil to drain, you can attach a pipe or attach a hose to it like this, and then let it go down into a bucket, and you don't have a mess. Just like that. I've got this on my other air compressor too that I've had since like 1984. It's worked out perfect when I change oil. So to use this, it's real simple. It's brass and stainless steel. You see this little this handle back here. Okay, spring loaded. So when I want to change oil in this compressor, I won't have a mess in the future. All I've got to do is push in on the valve and down, and now it'll drain. Obviously make sure that you've disconnected any electric source so that it can't start up with no oil in the pump. But I hook up my hose here, let it drain. When I'm done, simply just take this valve, push it back up, and it goes right back into place. One of the things I like about the oil, you can actually use, it shows here, Mobil 1 synthetic 10W30. I like when I don't have to buy any special oil, and it does say do not use regular automotive oil. Additives in regular motor oil can cause valve deposits and reduce pump life. Just for the heck of it, I did call Lowe's customer support on the unit, because my thought was, obviously the synthetic isn't like your standard, so the synthetic is what made it okay, because I just want to make dang sure. So, and they pretty much said that yes, you don't want to use non-synthetic. You want to definitely use the synthetic blend oil, no matter what brand. But I happen to use Mobil 1 anyways in my vehicles, so that's what I used. Okay guys, another thing that I changed was the gauge. This is the gauge that comes on it. And I just didn't like the resolution. I like this one much better, easier to read. It is also glycerin filled. So if you take a comparison of the size, you can see it's quite a bit bigger here. And it does allow to read it easier. And this thing was just like $13 or $14 from Menards. So this is what I purchased. Master Force, which is a Menards brand. 207-4699. Now let's take a look at the drain valve that comes with this compressor. 1/4-inch pipe thread. Now, with it off the compressor, it's real easy to use. When it's on the compressor at the bottom, it is harder than hell to get a hold of and to get to. This little short, plus it's plastic. Now the inside might be okay. I'm sure it's alright. But the handle's plastic. And I just didn't want to use it, keep it. Plus the fact that when it's on the unit, it is very hard to turn. Extremely hard. So here's what I made up. I made this arrangement up to put at the bottom of the tank. And these are pieces that I had left over. I have a valve just like this on my air compressor from 1984. It's a Craftsman, but it actually says DeVilbiss, Toledo, Ohio on it. And this thing works beautiful. Okay, it's got a much longer handle. And the way this will go, the way you're looking at it, this will go up into the tank on the bottom. So the tank will be here. And I'll be able to reach this and get to it. And I use this, instead of a regular, just a 90, which had a bigger profile, longer, I used this T that I had because it was shorter here. And it would be closer to the tank, which is what I wanted. I didn't want any more distance below the tank as possible. So I just put a brass plug in the end. Then I used a short nipple here to join the T to the valve. And then I happened to find, I wanted a 90, and I happened to find this 90 that I had. One side is pipe thread, the other side is a compression fitting. Well, I didn't need that, but it works perfect. So this is my 90. So the air, when I open this up, which is it is here, this is the closed configuration. When I open this up, air will then be released from the tank, air and water, moisture. This will direct it down to the ground. So that is a much easier to use than this, what came with it. Alright, so here's the valve mounted. Now one of the reasons I also wanted this close is obviously this would represent the floor, this board, so I needed to have room. That's why I needed this close up here with this T. Otherwise I would have just had a 90 coming out and eliminated that end. But one of my thoughts at this point, after having run this under load, it doesn't move on this pallet. My thought is to keep it right on the pallet that it came from, put it, get it set where it needs to go, and then just put boards up, or just set it where I want it, and then put boards from to space it out where I want, and just push it up against and leave it. This is actually turning out to be very good right here. So that's my initial thought right for the moment. But let's try this. Right now this is in the open position, so we will close this just like that. Works beautiful, easy to get to. I'm on the back side at the moment. I'd be on the other side, but to do this video. So now let me go turn it on, and I'll show you how this thing works. Now open the valve here a little bit. Some air should come out. That'll direct it down. Now this valve works 1,000 times better than that little one that was on there. The little one was very hard to get to. So you can move it either direction. There. Another thing that you want to make note of is I'm using this extremely small tripod with the legs fully out, setting on this pallet. It is actually setting on the wood pallet. When I did that last clip, notice there's no vibration. So that's how smooth this base is. That's one of the things that I was trying to say is it's so good on this thing. I could just push it over where I want it and leave it and always pull it out when I need to, and it doesn't have to be permanently mounted. So I'm going to use a rubber, I'm going to use a flexible fitting that goes from this to my airline in the garage wall, so it'd work out perfect. And here is that valve again, the original. If you can imagine sitting up here and screwed in, when it's all the way where this would be and screwed and screwed in, this thing sets really close. This handle sets really close. It's hard to get to. And you've got to take this and turn it down like that. And yet when it's screwed up in here like that and in the center, it's hard to get to. So that's what I was talking about. That's why this valve was useless from that point alone. Even if it was a good one, I'd have to change it somehow. So that's why I did this. Another thing I changed, or actually kind of added something to, was this hose that you see here that comes through this hole. It's like a hard type plastic, goes into this quick fitting here. That goes down to the pressure switch. Air comes back up there into the pressure switch, and it's fed back here. It starts right here. You see that to the right, that black hose. Well, it was up against, now this hole is smooth, okay, there's no burrs, but it was up against there. So I took a piece of 1/4 inch diameter hose, like a fuel hose, split it on one side, and put that in there that you see, so that way it acts as a little bit of a cushion. Probably would never have a problem, but I just thought I would do that, so that way if through any vibrations or anything, that wouldn't wear a hole in that tube. Here you see a clear view of that hose, and then there you see where on the other side I put that rubber. So this is the hose that I use, 1/4 inch inside diameter, and then just took a utility knife scored the one side, pulled it apart, and put it over that other hose that you saw, that to the pressure switch, and then this acts as a sleeve. So that this acts as a sleeve, this outer casing around the other thing, to help protect it from if it ever should abrade. Another thing that I did is I used 10 gauge wire to use as basically an extension cord. Bought this 90-degree, wired it up here in the switch, used this so that it would come out at 90, and instead of letting it just hang on this, I decided to drill a 1/4-inch hole. This is really thick. I mean, it's nice and stout. And then I put 2 tie wraps on there, so that way it's up and it acts as a strain relief from just hanging here. I just, you know, just didn't want anything here. This way, if I'm pulling on it or doing something, it's going to be right here at the, so those worked out really nice. Because when I use this, I think I've decided I'm just going to use this as an extension cord and plug it in. I was going to put a switch on it and switch it, but instead of using the switch that comes with it up here all the time, I would prefer to leave it in the on position and then just unplug it when I don't want it. That's how I've got my single stage compressor right now, so I'm going to go back to that. Now the unit I have shuts off between 160 and 165. It's not always consistent, and we're going to see what it turns on at. Now it's always consistent. It always comes back on at 130 pounds. The unit will always come on at 130, but it shuts off between 160 and 165. Sometimes it's 160, a little more. Sometimes it's 165, which is fine with me. Okay guys, this is your outlet for the air from your tank. And I've taken the reducing bushing out. And what I wanted to do was put sealant on the threads. But when I took it apart, I noticed that it's got a nice hefty O-ring in here. So you don't need to have any sealant on the threads. And as you can see here, the mating surface, it has this radiused feature for the O-ring to seal up against. So that's good. And I thought, well, since I had it apart, I'd show you guys in case you weren't sure. But and then it's reduces down to 3/4 inch pipe thread. Okay, so I've got the air compressor installed, and what I've got back here is my original 1/2-inch airline copper. And in the meantime, until I get the bigger airline put in, what you're going to see is an adapter that goes from 1/2 inch to 3/4. Then I had this air hose made up, 8 foot long, with hydraulic fittings that you see here. 8 foot long air hose, and that was like $43. And so that allows me to get piped into my airline that goes to the front of the garage. And by having it looped like this, when I want to do maintenance to this, if I have to pull this air compressor out, I can do that. Plus there's no vibration. This will not transmit vibration through the line. It's so much easier to hook it up. Then what I ended up doing too is buying this heavy duty valve So that way, if I want, I can shut the airline off and disconnect the tank from the airline if I have to do anything to either or. Now guys, like I said previous, I decided just to leave this air compressor on the heavy duty pallet that it came on. It does not move, it doesn't vibrate, it stays put. Why should I go through the extra effort of having to lift it off, drill holes in the concrete, which I really wouldn't prefer to do. Now the steel pieces that you see here are from my original air compressor that I had in here, my 30-gallon 2-cylinder single stage air compressor that I bought at Sears back in the mid 80s, and it was actually a DeVilbiss. That tag on it says Toledo, Ohio. So I took that off of here. It was on a wooden platform. Took that off and just elected to keep those there. And then I just put a 2x4 in the back. You'll see a 2x4 up against the wall and push the pallet right up against. There's no insulation on the walls. There's nothing that I think they tell you to keep it like 18 inches. I forget what the manual says, but I have no need to really do that. Now, something I did to aid in moving this, I did this all by myself. When I had Lowe's deliver it to my home, they stuck it inside the garage. And that's where I did all my other little work that I did in changes. But I found that I could shimmy this thing, walk it on the pallet, okay, on this pallet by myself. And I was just using the sides of this. But I thought, well, if I made a handle, if I had something that would extend this, give me more leverage on both sides, that would be so much the better. So what I ended up doing is taking some stock that I had. It just happened to be the right length. It was 32.5 inches long. Didn't need to cut it. It's 1 inch by 1 inch by 1/8 inch thick angle iron aluminum. And all I did was locate it, drill some holes. And now I have a nice handhold that when I want to move this thing, now when I want to move it back out, should I need to replace a belt, do any kind of maintenance, it's just a matter of me grabbing both sides of this and just walking it, just kind of jerking it back and forth. Hell, it comes right out. So this is really, I'm really glad to, excuse me, to see that this worked out so well by just leaving it right on that pallet. I will say that the 3 updates that I did to this air compressor from original that I find the most effective for me was changing the gauge to the bigger gauge, glycerin filled, and before I did anything else, let it run. I let it run 45 minutes. Then a few days later, I decided to go with this arrangement so that in the future I can drain the oil. So I drained the oil, I warmed it up again, drained the oil, put this on that you saw earlier. I think that is a major, major plus and will really help me in keeping the mess down. And the other thing that was really advantageous was the drain valve down here for the air to drain the tank. So much easier to get to, and it's worked beautiful. Now, as I said earlier, I've elected not to use the shut-off switch. I will leave it on, and when I want to shut it off, I'll just disconnect it here. Now, this is my 240 volt line, and this is the outlet that my air generator takes if I want to backfeed it. So what I've done, and this is the end, it's a twist lock. So what I've done is made up this little short adapter. So when I want to use the generator, I pull this off, plug the generator to backfeed the house once I've locked off the main so that it can't be switched back on. I lock it off with a lock. Okay, so if I want to use my table saw or this air compressor, I've made this short adapter right here from the yellow on up. Now that'll convert me back to the outlet that is required for, again, the air compressor and my table saw. And then I'll just disconnect it here when I want to shut off and ensure that the air compressor doesn't start. And this is the plug that I use for my air compressor. Another thing that I'm going to be doing is, you'll see up here those eye hooks, those eye bolts. I had a fan suspended from there, so I'm going to get me a new one. The other one, you know, was pretty old since the mid-80s. So I'm going to buy a new fan, and that'll hang, so that way when I want to have extra cooling, since this is in the back corner of my garage, when I want to have airflow to help cool the compressor, the pump, that'll do it. It's worked out well for my other one. Should do fine here. Okay, one final thing I want to try here before I end this video is, I'm going to use this air file. I'm just going to see how this keeps up with it running constant. Let's see what happens. Okay, I shut the air file off at 1.5 minutes, so that's what it was doing in 1.5 minutes. So, and now again, that's with my airline, with 1/2-inch airline copper from where this air compressor is down to the front of the garage, and then it goes into a regulator, water separator, and then goes into 3/8 holes, and I think it's like 50 feet. So just thought I'd try that to see what it does. I don't have the specs on this air file as far as how many CFM. This is a Chicago pneumatic that I bought way back, I believe in the early 80s. So not really sure what the specs are as to what the CFM consumption is.